Thank you,
the
Mr. President.
expert in public works.
Not, anyway.
Expert in right-of-way.
Let me, Mr. President, let me preface my interpellation with a very simple statement. No? When preparation is defective, everything that follows fails. Having said that, Mr. President, as a review, Budget 101, no, there are 4 phases in the national budgeting process. We all know this: preparation phase, authorization, which we are doing now, and then execution, and finally accountability. Now, under the preparation phase, Mr. President, the DBM or the DBCC sets the budget ceiling before issuing the budget call, where the agencies prepare their budgets and, of course, defend their budgets before the coordinating committee. Now, my first question related to this, Mr. President, is under the 2019 budget, DBCC set a 480 billion peso budget ceiling for DPWH. This is much lower than what DPWH submitted to DBM with amount of 651 billion. Now, my question, Mr. President, is even before this was taken up during the question hour, was the department aware that a 75 billion pesos or 75 billion pesos was added to the 480 billion initially set by DBM? Were they already aware, Mr. President, even before this was taken up during the question hour? Yes or no lang, Mr. President?
I just have to read into the record the chronology of the 75 billion.
First, please answer my question. Is it a yes or a no?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 points I have to
No,
cite.
please answer my question first.
Your question is...
Were they aware already, even before this was taken up during the question hour, that 71 billion was added to the original submission of 480 or 651 billion? Or the 480 billion, I mean.
They were aware. Yes.
So
they were aware. You're saying before the question hour.
Of course, everybody's aware now because this was taken up during the question hour. This was
Yes.
divulged by no less than the DBM secretary. My question is, were they aware beforehand?
Before when?
Before the question hour, when it was...
Before the question hour, Secretary Villar was aware.
Okay.
But before the NEP, I have to read the timeline para sigurado. Just let me read it and then I will update.
Okay. So,
Ito po.
he was aware, period.
You have to say the timeline so you know at what point.
Kasi, well, Mr. President, if you ask me, I'm asking him, was he aware? He's asking me, when was I aware? Before question hour? Before the
Before
NEP?
question hour, my question.
Yes. Before the question hour, he was aware. But in a DBM letter to DPWH Secretary Villar dated March 20, 2018, way before the question hour, DBM recommended an amount of 123.967 billion as a Tier 1 level and indicated that 2019 budget will adopt the cash base. And so, on May 15, 2018, again, way before the question hour, DPWH had a budget ceiling of 600, requested for a budget ceiling of 650.550 billion for 2019, same level as 2018. DBM responded that the recommended budget for DPWH is 480.160 billion. That was May 15. Now, June 21, 2018, Secretary Villar confirmed the 480 billion budget ceiling, which is 36% lower than the budget request of 650 billion. In July 2018, Secretary Villar submitted the DPWH budget proposal of 480 billion for this year, 2019, with a breakdown. So the 75 billion is not part of the DPWH submission as of July 11, 2018. But was he aware of a bigger budget? Yes, 650 billion if it was not a cash budget and if it was not cut for Tier 1 by DBM, because it is the same level as the previous year. I'm sorry, I cannot just answer yes or no, Mr. President, because it has to
Well,
be
you
explained.
answered me, Mr. President, with a yes.
Yes, he knew about it. Okay. He knew,
Simple lang ang tanong kung yes or no. Yes, and then qualify it. Mr.
yes.
President. Yes, okay.
He knew about it before the question hour, because the question hour was just in December of 2018.
Okay.
And I gave you a timeline of March, May, June, July. So he knew about a 650, cut to only 480, and previous year 650. So Tier 1 is the only one included in the NEP, but he knew that there was a bigger universe of 650. But DBM said it's cash-based, it's only 480. So, again, I'm reading from the notes, this is not my own interpretation. DPWH learned about it after it was included in the NEP for the deliberations of Congress. So what I'm saying, Mr. President, is the DPWH was going to submit, or submitted, a 650,
1 billion.
right? 650, originally. Requested.
Requested.
Okay. DPWH requested for a budget ceiling of 650B commensurate to the previous year. But they were informed, because it's a cash-based budget for 2019, to peg it at 480 billion. And so only 480 was submitted,
Was included in the NEP.
was included in the NEP.
Okay.
Opo.
Now, follow-up question.
Tapos,
Okay na, Mr. President.
may sinasabi kasi yung pro temp eh.
Sige.
Gusto mong sumagot?
The
No,
follow-up
no.
question is,
Oo. Okay. Tama na po yun.
are the projects
Am I accurate?
are the projects listed in the 75 billion incremental increase included in their original submission of 651?
651 is no corresponding list. That's just the ceiling that we requested.
Okay. Again, this is not the chairman of finance statement. I am being prompted what to say. No, I have to say that because I don't want to be blamed in a
Again,
in a
Mr.
war
President,
between
the
possibly
question is very
between
simple.
departments who can blame each other. I am told, Mr. President, that the ceiling of 651 billion was a request of DPWH.
We
But
know that.
they were told to peg it to 480.
We know that already,
But
Mr.
there is
President.
no list submitted. In answer to your question, there was no list submitted by DPWH. Magalit naman ang...
How would you submit a proposed budget of 651 billion without a list? How can you justify, during the defense of the budget with the DBCC, how would DPWH defend their budget or submitted the 651 billion peso budget without having particulars? Medyo mahirap yun, Mr. President. You pluck it from thin air.
Mr. President, the 651 billion was a budget ceiling request. It was not yet a list of projects itemized for the 651 because they were already told to limit the ceiling to 480. So they have not listed.
So what's the basis of the 651 billion peso request?
Yeah, why would, yeah, it makes,
There must be
yeah.
a basis for the figure.
According to Secretary Villar, he's basing it on the previous year's budget. But, no, sandali.
You can't. Yan ang nga sinasabi ko, Mr. President, preparation is everything. Kasi kung walang preparation, how will you implement something that you have not prepared for? Oh, sabihin niya wala eh. Oo. Kaya nga eh. Paano hindi depend yun? Lump sum.
Mr. President, let me clarify. Because of the Build program of government, DPWH has a wide range of projects if we have unlimited resources. In the words of Yusek Cabral, in the unconstrained universe, there's 651B or more. However, BBM told DPWH that the ceiling is only 480. So only 480 was submitted, but the difference between 651 and 480 are existing projects. There are infrastructure needs amounting to 651B and more. But they only, the mother is answering. Ano? Teka, nagugulan ako.
Mr. President, the point that I'm trying to drive at, yung bang 75 billion initiative ng DPWH or initiative ng DBM?
Ano?
Yeah, I just rephrased my question, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
for
can
a while,
I
Mr.
make a
President.
manifestation, so I will answer the question.
Mr. President, let me rephrase the question. No? Yung 75 billion, para lang maliwanag, was that the initiative of the DPWH or the DBM?
The sponsor, are you going to answer or are you,
Okay, Mr. President. 651B, there's 60, okay, there's infrastructure requests, projects, perhaps even more than 651B. Because our country of 105 million people can take more than 651B of infrastructure needs, but only 480B was submitted because of the dictated ceiling by DBM. Yung diferensya po ay meron namang projects, hindi po iisipin, iimbentohin ng DBM o ng DPWH, meron pong universe. Pero ito lang po ang sinabit, kasi sabi ito lang. Pero meron naman lahat po yan. Tama? Senator Recto? Okay.
Please answer my question. Initiative ba ng DPWH yung 75? Meaning, kasama ba yun sa original submission na 651? Or initiative ng DBM na bigyan sila ng additional 75?
The 480
No,
billion...
75 na lang muna.
Teka muna. The 480 billion is a submission identified by DPWH
No.
to DBM. Now, over and above that, I am told is not their submission.
Yes.
Huh?
So that's clear. The 75 billion additional or incremental increase,
Tama. O sige. Ha?
so malinaw po na yung 75 billion na dinagdag ng DBM doon sa 480 billion, hindi nanggaling sa DPWH. Initiative ito ng DBM.
To be fair, it's not DBM, it's their LGU request. So, Mr. President, We know it here. If even a barangay captain submits
Mr.
requests.
President,
So,
yung LGU po hindi kasama sa DBCC. Ang nagseset ng ceiling, budget ceiling, DBCC led by DBM. So nagsubmit po yung DPWH, never mind the timelines, ng 651 billion. Ang sabi ng DBM, hindi, 480 billion lang kayo. Ngayon, hindi natin alam pare-pareho dahil nung nagkaroon ng question hour, biglang inamin ni Secretary Jokno na hindi 480 kung hindi 555 dahil nagdagdagan pa ito ng 75 billion. Ang tanong ko po, yung bang una, 75 billion ba kasama doon sa originally submitted 651 o labas doon? Or initiative ba iyon ng DPWH o initiative ng DBM na magdagdag ng 75 billion? Kung initiative po ng DBM, di sabihin niyo po na initiative ng DBM.
suspension.
Session is suspended.
Wala pa nga tayo doon sa gist ng ano natin. Nandiyan na. Pwede natin sundan yung original. Para nilang
question ko, yung pag-awayin ng mga kabinete. No, I have to be diplomatic about it.
Sagot natin. Yung 75, tatakingin natin kay Joke, no?
It's their prerogative on because their budget, the budget emanates from them.
This is a very suspicious really rattling the book.
Yeah.
So when he can find something, he will produce it. You don't want to be involved with it, right?
No.
So you just point out, saan galing yan?
But I know how to answer also because me, ayoko magpangamak ng tao. I mean, I'm mabait.
Sabihin mo yun, sabihin mo yun.
One day it can be you and I will also. Ganun ako. I will not say nothing. Because I don't want anybody's business. Yeah, I just wanna make sure.
Misled in the sense that even if we submit this,
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
I actually am grateful to Senator Lacson so that these issues can finally be clarified also in my mind because there's so many news coming out from the congressional hearings and media. So, to put it briefly, correctly, accurately, again, I am informed. It's not from my personal knowledge because it's the first time I'm being confronted with this. And to be fair, I have not asked DBM to answer this. So let it not be a blame game that I'm trying to besmirch the reputation of one department or a person. I'm just being told the information I gather is that DPWH submitted 480 billion
No,
ceiling.
651. 651. DPWH submitted 651.
No, okay. Let me
Yung
state.
submit nila.
According to Secretary Villar, DPWH submitted 480 billion list of projects. Before that, he communicated a budget ceiling request with no projects identified of 651 billion based on the previous year's budget. However, because it is a cash-based year 2019, they were informed by DBM to limit it to 480 billion, which they followed and therefore submitted identified infrastructure projects. I think that's very accurate, okay? That's
Okay, yung 480 billion na sinabit ng DPWH at DBM, kasi yun ang ginawang budget ceiling. But ang original submission ng DPWH, 651.
Hindi.
But because there's a 480 billion... Yeah,
I will clarify, Mr. President. According to Secretary Villar, he did not submit a 651 billion listing of identified projects, but simply a budget ceiling request with no details yet. Tama?
Well, my question is, the way I know the procedure sa preparation, di ba pagdating ng budget call, the NGAs, the different agencies, will submit their, yun nga, sinabi nyo, 651 budget ceiling. But you will have to defend that. How could you defend something na hindi mo alam yung details? Saan ang galing yung 651 na ceiling? Kaya nga,
According to Secretary Villar, it's from the previous year's budget ceiling because it was still an obligation budget. But to be fair to everybody, if ever there's a 75 or a 175 difference, this is part of the budgetary process because, as you say, NGA, submit, etc. And if there's fiscal space, it is a prerogative of DBM to increase the budget of an agency or to decrease it if it so desires or thinks so. And so it changed. That's what I am informed. They submitted 480. Their ceiling intention, the initial was 651. They only submitted the fine print, identified 480, but there was room for 651 and more. And Secretary Villar himself said that there's nothing wrong with the increase by DBM because it's their job. The budget emanates from them. And there are projects from all sources, LGUs, NGAs, etc., so that there was space between 480 and 651. That's what you said, right? And
So-
555.
Okay, so balik ako doon sa question ko kanina. Yung 75 billion, initiative to na DBM. Kasi hindi kasama doon sa universe, doon sa ceiling na ipinadala ng DPWH sa DBM.
According to the DPWH, yes,
Oh, tama.
because it is not part of the 480.
Now, how would they implement 75 billion worth of projects kung hindi nila alam? Inilad yan sa kanila eh. Sino ngayon?
The 75 came out in the net.
Yeah.
Check namin
Wait,
after it
wait,
came out
wait.
in the net.
The NEP is 555. So, the 75 may not be in your initiative, but it was part of your submission in the NEP. So, sa'yo na yun. Kasi, I mean, whatever happened before the NEP, that was na kayo whatever
So I'll tell you
agency.
the timeline. What came on the net was 555.
Mr. President, 555 came out in the NEP,
Yes.
meaning somewhere between before the NEP and the NEP, because it's already 555, DPWH already knows about the 75 because DPWH included the 75 in the NEP, and therefore DPWH is already aware, enlightened, and can implement it because already talked to DBM because it's in the NEP. How can DPWH not be aware of something DPWH included in the NEP? Maybe the initial submission was 480.
DPM included. We found out when the net came out.
So according to Secretary Villar, he found out about the 75 when he saw the NEP. Subsequently. Huh?
You mentioned, Mr. President, you mentioned that DPWH already knew na merong additional 75 before NEP was submitted. Tama? Ganun po ba, di ba? Kasi part na ng NEP eh. Okay. Mr. President, knowing and being part of the preparation of the budget are two different things. Nalaman ninyo, kasi nadagdagan nga yung 480 ng 75, naging 555. Pero meron ba silang part o participation sa preparation ng mga projects na mako-cover ng 75 billion incremental increase? That's my question.
Okay. Mr. President, I am told that, I'll use the words, upon submission of the NEP, that is when Secretary Villar realized or saw
Ayun nga.
the 75 billion from the 480 billion the DPWH submitted for the NEP.
Okay, that's clear.
Uh-huh.
My question is that standard practice?
Ay, naku, hirap naman ako para. Mr. President, it's part of the budgetary process because the budget emanates from the agencies submitted to the DBM, and the DBM puts everything together and may decrease the Tier 2, increase the Tier 1 to accommodate the Tier 2. Mr. President.
Just with the permission of the colleagues on the floor,
Pwede naman.
you know, what we could not understand,
Any hot water pa? Attorney Doblon.
Loren.
Ah, yes, Mr.
yes,
President.
with your permission, Mr. President, you know, DBM says, DPWH, your budget ceiling is 480 billion. Suddenly, when the NEP was submitted,
It became,
75 billion was added. Right?
yes, Mr.
Now.
President.
If DBM said 480 is your budget ceiling, what dawned on them to change it to add 75 billion?
Because there was
as a new
fiscal
budget ceiling?
space.
What?
First, there was fiscal space, and second, because there were more projects that could have been accommodated and implemented, and that's part of the budgetary process.
No, that budgetary process, I take exception. Because the budgetary process, the first part is the budget ceiling is imposed by the DBCC. In this case, 480 billion. So, apparently, there was a light from somewhere that they realized that they needed
75.
additional 75 billion.
Mr.
What
President.
light was that? Saan ang galing yung...
Definitely from not from the DPWH.
Not
Mr.
from
President.
DPWH, because DPWH said we have nothing to do with that.
Okay, para po maliwanag. Gaya po ng ating ginagawa, nagtatanggal, nagpapalit, nagbabawas, nagdadagdag. Sa simula po ng proyekto ay ng NEP, bago paghahanda ng President's budget, hindi ba yun ang tungkulin ng DBM? Kumuha lahat sa ahensya, ipagsama-sama, at tanggalin ang Tier 2, ibalik ang Tier 2 pag may lugar, para ma-accommodate yan, Tier 1, Tier 2, bawasan ang Tier 2, ganun. So,
Clearly, Mr. President, if that is the representation to our sponsor, that is an afterthought to rationalize the additional 75 billion, which at this point is incredible. You know, why don't we admit that somebody told the DBM, dagdagan mo ng 75 billion, because the next
I
question...
cannot admit that because I don't have first-hand knowledge, Mr.
Yes,
President.
but you have
I'm
DPWH.
sorry.
But,
I cannot admit. Mr. President, I'm
it is
sorry.
illogical.
Hindi ako
You know,
pwede
what you are presenting to us is something that we cannot believe. We don't blame you. But because that is what being fed to you. But we cannot believe that, you know, the presentation that suddenly 75 billion is added when DBM was the one who imposed the 480 ceiling in the first place.
Kasi naguhula-hula ako ng utak nila eh. Papuntahin ng
Okay,
DBM
we'll
dito
give you
para
that much leeway, Mr. President. Ang tanong na lang,
dapat may
was
DBM
DPWH
dito.
even consulted by DBM? Oy, may additional pa, bibigyan ko pa kayo ng 75 billion. So, i-adjust nyo yung mga projects ninyo. Dahil meron pa kayo additional. Was that done? Consultation na lang, wag na yung ano. Or it just cropped up at doon na lang nalaman ng DPWH, ba, 555 na pala tayo.
Senator Gordon. Mr. President, I agree with Senator Lacson and Senator Dillon. This is serious stuff, Mr. President. When the budget is submitted of 480 billion, suddenly has an additional 75 billion, it is the Congress prerogative to find out where the money is coming from. Otherwise, you will call it misappropriation. Only Congress can appropriate monies for projects, Mr. President. Now, all of a sudden, you have a rider of 75 billion, and that is why all of us are interested in finding out what happened and what we're going to do about it, Mr. President. That's all, Mr. President.
Mr. President, they consulted each other upon submission of the NEP when they saw the 75B inclusion.
Upon submission of the NEP, doon lang
Yes.
sila nag-usap. Hindi
know
before the
exactly.
submission. So walang consultation man lang.
Ano?
Meron ng Bill of Particulars yung DBM when they added the 75 billion. That's the implication. And worse, without even informing DPWH beforehand.
Okay, Mr. President, Secretary Villar, I asked him several times, says that he did not know about the 75 billion until he saw the NEP. Again, this is not my speculation. I am speaking in behalf of the DPWH, and they insist that they submitted the 480 billion to DBM, and he discovered about the 75 billion upon seeing the NEP. That is what DPWH says. But then, it is part of the budgetary process that the agency that prepares the budget may delete, increase, change whatever was submitted by the agency.
While there's no closure, let me proceed to the next topic, Mr. President.
The Pro Temp wishes to seek the floor
Yes,
before
since the good senator from Cavite will now proceed to the next topic, and I'm waiting for the next topic as well. Just to finish off on this particular topic, Mr. President, isn't it that the budget today in the NEP is 555 billion?
Yes, Mr. President.
And this NEP is the budget of the President, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
So in effect, this is the prerogative of the office of the President,
Yes, Mr. President.
okay? And who is the alter ego of the President in preparing the
The
budget?
DBM Secretary.
The DBM Secretary. So isn't it also the prerogative of the DBM Secretary?
Yes, that's what I said. It's part of the budgetary process.
Now-
That it is a prerogative of the executive
Yes.
to collate all budget submissions and to augment, change,
Correct.
delete,
Correct.
add, because before they present it, because it is the president's budget.
And before the NEP is submitted to Congress, isn't this also approved by the Cabinet or by the Office of the President?
It is, Mr. President.
Cabinet muna, then Office of the President.
Now, the Cabinet and the Office of the President.
Yes, Mr. President.
And when the President is satisfied, this goes to Congress.
Yes.
It is submitted to Congress as constitutionally mandated.
Yes, Mr. President.
And then Congress now, in our system of checks and balances,
Scrutinizes,
scrutinizes
That's
the
what we're
budget
doing here.
submitted.
amends.
That's what we are doing here.
Yes.
Precisely my point, Mr. President. So I look at it this way, Mr. President. I understand the issues being raised here in the sense that it would be, maybe in the past, 75 billion may have been too big as an addition.
Maybe there were no additions in the past, Mr. President, without
I would assume that there
informing
would
the
have been.
agency concerned.
I would
That's
assume
why I
that there
asked,
would be.
is this standard practice? Maybe
My
it happened
point is-
only now.
Yes, it's possible only now, or the significant increases only now. Having said that, I look at this as the budget of the President.
President's
And
power.
it is up to Congress now to make the necessary amendments. We cannot increase the budget, but we can cut the budget. And that is our job now in Congress. Now, my big concern is that the 2018 budget of DPWH was 651 billion. And that is why DPWH asked for a budget ceiling of 651. Okay? And today, we are approving a budget lower than the budget last year. In effect, for DPWH. It is 100 billion lower than last year's budget.
Yes.
Kung wala pa yung 75, it would be 175 billion lower.
Because it's cash-based, yes.
Yes. Okay? And I understand also where the 480 came from. The disbursement in 2017 for continuing appropriations and the current year was only roughly 405 billion. And they projected through a cash base plus 75, kaya 480 lang. Isn't that correct? I see the people in DPWH nodding. Now, so my concern is the budget is 100 billion smaller than last
From the
year.
previous year's budget. From the
Yes.
651, it's 550.
Correct. And isn't the program of the President build, build, build?
So
And
what
if
you're
that's the
saying,
program, why is it even lower?
dinagdagan na nga.
Yun na nga, pero mas mababa pa rin.
Mababa
Kahit
pa rin kasi nga
dinagdagan.
cash-based.
Correct.
Because it's cash-based.
Okay, so it's still lower as far as the appropriations. Remember, the budget roughly is the same. 3.7 trillion last year. Cash-based this year, 3.7 trillion pa rin. but the DPWH is 100 billion less. So thank you for the
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we are in agreement that it is a prerogative of DBM to augment, as in the office of the President, to add, to delete, to change, because it's the President's budget. It is up to us, Congress, to scrutinize it, to concur, to amend, to revise.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. President.
may we...
Minority Leader.
Mr. President, there is no question that this is the President's budget. There is no question that they have an absolute prerogative to do anything with the budget, submit a 10 trillion budget. That is their prerogative. But that such prerogative cannot be exercised arbitrarily. And that arbitrariness we see in this exercise when the DPWH submitted a 651 initially as their budget ceiling. DBM said no, only 480. But suddenly, it dawned on them that we should make it plus 75. In other words, not only 480, but suddenly we should add 75. The question being asked is, how did the 75 come about when precisely the DPWH is in the dark as to how this came about? They have no idea what these projects are. In other words, there is an indication of abuse of that discretion. Because while indeed it is your discretion and it's your prerogative, it is the President's budget, it is your prerogative, but that prerogative cannot be exercised to the point of being arbitrary, and that's what we see today. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Gatchalian.
Mr. President, just to continue the discussions, I feel there's a little bit of some loose ends. And I was talking to Senator Binay, and we both agree that there are some loose ends that we need to clarify. Ang tanong ko po, Mr. President, yung 75 billion, sino nag-identify ng mga projects? But how can they submit in the NEP kung walang identification ng projects?
Sir, the bigger concern, Mr. President, paano lang may implement? So mapupunta sa unused yan. Because DPWH precisely did not know that 75 billion worth of projects had been added. May budget, walang project, paano lang i-implement? So
Mr.
mauwi sa
President,
unused.
Mr. President, it is in the NEP, it is identified. They validated it. Secretary Villar says it is listed. It will be validated. It's not a lump sum 75. It's line itemized.
But Mr.
These are
President-
line item projects.
How were they able to prepare to implement the 75 billion worth of projects kung hindi galing sa kanila? Sino nagplano ng mga proyekto na hindi galing sa kanila?
Correct. That's
Paano i-implement yung walang plano?
These are line item infra projects that
Who
are
planned?
in the NEP.
Who made the planning,
That
Mr. President?
will be validated, and there's ongoing validation of the 75.
Mr. President, just to follow up, Mr. President, in the news reports, there were
It's
a
not
few
allowed, no?
flood control projects that were identified.
Nako, patay ka dyan.
I just want to know, Mr. President, are those flood control projects included in the annual investment plan? Because the annual investment plan is the step one. Before you can even formulate all of those projects, the step one is the annual investment plan formulated by the Regional Development Council. I'm just curious, Mr. President, because the budget process comes from the local governments themselves. So kasama ba ho itong mga pinag-uusapan sa annual investment plan?
The DPWH, Mr. President, is in the process of validation of the 75 billion.
Pinoprocess pa nila yung validation. Paano ma-implement yan? Pinoprocess pa yung binabalidate pa nila. Mr. President, this is the best argument against cash-based budgeting. Kasi ngayon pa lang pinoprocess yung validation ng mga projects na nakalista na sa NEP. I wonder how they will implement such projects.
They're completing the process of validation, Mr. President, and will submit it to us within the week? Within the week.
Who did the planning, Mr. President? Naturally, pagka meron kayo implement na project, may planning yan eh. So who did the planning?
Who submitted the program of work?
Yes.
Hindi ko alam, hindi ko masasagot, hindi ko alam yan.
Nahuli kayo kasi. Sige, marunong magtago.
Pakita nga niyo mamaya yung sa akin, yung 750. 75, hindi ko lang. Meron kayong dito.
So what is the response?
Cannot answer that. I don't know who planned it. Ping. Oh, paano? Hindi ko masasagot yan.
Yes, session suspended.
Ano, Ping? Hindi ko masagot yan. Hindi na nila masagot. Paano yun?
and we need the comment of the agency, the DPWH, that the 75 billion that they had admitted not knowing except when or until it was included in NEP be deleted at the proper time during the period of amendments.
Yes, Mr. President.
So, and the DPWH family is amenable to such a move.
Yes, Mr. President.
You can speak on behalf of the Secretary, of course.
He already mentioned it to me before the break, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Having said that, let us proceed to the next topic. This is now the right-of-way issues. If you recall, Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, last year I questioned the 86.07 billion worth of projects with right-of-way components. Out of the 86.07 billion, 18.8, we asked for the deletion of 18.8, but the DPWH appealed for restorations and submitted to us, to this committee, the disaggregated portion for the right-of-way appropriations. So we're left with 67.7 billion. And then from the 67.7 billion, again, we agreed to retain 5.5 billion since there was a typo error in the NEP or in the GAB that inadvertently deleted the phrase including ROW. So that leaves us with 62.2 billion pesos. And from the 62.2 billion, 11.4 are actually ROW payments, for ROW payments. So that leaves us with 50.8 billion that even the body, the Senate at the time, approved in plenary to be deleted. However, Mr. President, on December 4, I think, last year, DPWH sent a letter to the chair of the Finance Committee requesting for the restoration of the 50.855 billion appropriations for civil war components, committing to the committee that these were implementable projects, and they would make sure that the right-of-way issues would be settled within the year. And we relented, Mr. President. That's why 50.8 billion was restored, the full amount. From there, we did our homework and find out which among the list of projects with right-of-way issues were completed, or the status of the projects. So we sent our teams to the different areas in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao to inspect and find out from the claimants themselves, the owners of the properties affected by the road construction or road widening. Next slide, please. But first, we had it deleted because of the special provision under Section 12 of under the GA of 2018, the year that was, Mr. President. It says right-of-way acquisition and obligations. In the implementation of infrastructure projects, the DPWH shall ensure that all ROW expenses authorized under RA number 1073 or 52 are settled before the commencement of projects. So that is the basis for our action last year to have 50.8 billion deleted, which was eventually restored because of the commitment made by DPWH that they would make sure that all these ROW issues would be settled within the year. So we proceed to case study number 1, Mr. President, and this is the Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension. I'll deal with the Padre Garcia or the Batangas Bypass Road later in my interpellation, but I'll show you first the case study number 1 involving Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension, including ROW. This is found in Leyte, Mr. President. As a refresher, again, this particular project is among the 2018 DPWH projects with right-of-way issues that I have proposed to be deleted pursuant to the special provision of GAA on ROW. However, the DPWH appealed, and ito yung settled na. Ito yung this particular area, ito yung settled na. Yeah. And in fairness to DPWH, this particular segment, Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension, lahat po ng ROW issues dito na settled. So passable na yung road, and I'd like to personally commend DPWH for accomplishing this particular portion of the bypass road extension, including ROW in Leyte, in Tacloban. However, Mr. President, looking at the historical data of the project appropriations, the project named Tacloban City Bypass Road, including ROW, has been consistently funded from 2015 to 2018, amounting to a total of 982 billion pesos. And for 2018, it is observed that there are already 2 items in the GAA pertinent to this project. 1, Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension, including right-of-way, Tacloban City, Leyte, and 2, Tacloban City Bypass Road, Leyte. With a new item for bypass road extension amounting to 161.5 million, the budget for the project will balloon to 1.143 billion pesos. And under the 2019 GAB, the project Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension packages A and B may total appropriations of 240 million, while Tacloban City Bypass Road packages A and B mayroong 210 million funding. So I'd like to be clarified on this, Mr. President, kasi ito yung mga appropriations. Ano ba yung Tacloban City Bypass Road Extension as differentiated from the Tacloban City Bypass Road? Kasi dalawang parehong package A, parehong package B, pero it seems these are the same projects, Mr. President. Mr. President, pag sinabi bang extension, magkoconnect ito sa National Road?
The extension, Mr. President, extends to San Juanico, and the first phase and the second phase is Babatnon. Is that a barangay? A town? It's another town. To Babatnon. That is the extension. It's a different project from the bypass road in Tacloban.
It's under the 2018. Kasi ito yung precisely hinahanap ng team that inspected this particular project, Mr. President, and they could not locate yung road project described as bypass road extension. So hindi pa nagko-comments ito, Mr. President, and it's funded under the 2018 GAA. So may we know
Yes,
the
Mr.
status or the cause for the delay even in the commencement of this particular project? Kasi may pondo po ito eh.
The project is not stalled, Mr. President. It's ongoing. We don't have the exact, we can submit to you the exact status in terms of the percentage of accomplishment. Do you have it now? But it's ongoing.
But it
Mr.
has
President.
commenced, Mr. President. The road construction has commenced,
Yes,
as
Mr.
a matter of fact. And ano yung accomplishment,
Anong percentage of accomplishment?
ilang percent na?
As of October 31, 51% is completed, Mr. President.
51%.
In the bypass road extension, 51% has been completed, Mr. President.
Anyway, we'll go now to the issue on ROW, yung unsettled ROW issue. Yung meron pong tinamaan dito na yung Regina Hills subdivision, and the residents in the area, they were interviewed, and it poses danger or hazard to motorists because, look, cut yung road, pero ginagamit na, and yet, why can't you settle the ROW payments doon sa concerned claimants or concerned owner
Ba't
of the
hindi
property?
mabayad yung road? Mr. President, the right-of-way acquisition is under process.
In the meantime,
And they can consult with the, is a regional director of Region 8? Yes. What's the exact status? Is this Region 8?
anyway, ang request lang po daw ng Regina Hills subdivision owners dito,
Pumayag, wala namang problema. It's just,
maglagay lang ng tangke ng tubig, and they will allow. Ito yung 51%.
Mr. President, the acquisition of the right-of-way is ongoing. The regional director is here, and there are just maybe one or two landowners who are still being contacted, but it's proceeding.
Okay, hindi bali na po yan kasi may pera naman itong Regina Hills. What I will show you next, yung mga kawawang tao rito na tinamaan ng right of way and who do not know how to proceed. Because apparently, they were not being told and they were looking for the project engineer and they could not find him. So we conducted some interviews with the people there, the residents who are actually claimants. And ang pinagtataka nila, bakit? Because merong widening na aspect dito eh. And one of the interviewees told our team na sinabihan daw sila na nabayaran na yung kanilang mga ninuno. And apparently, I hope I'm wrong, there's deception because the project engineer or whoever told them was referring to the original road. Ang tinamaan sa kanila doon sa road widening, pero sinasabihan sila na hindi na, bayad na yan sa mga ninuno ninyo. But there's an original concrete road, which is a two-lane road, pero tinamaan naman sila doon sa widening. So, Mr. President, I'd like to appeal to the DPWH through the distinguished sponsor. Baka pwede namang madali natin because there's a social justice issue or social injustice, if you may call that, na yung mga tao, alam nyo, hindi naman nakapag-aral, walang wherewithal to even hire an attorney. In fact, let me show you the actual interview with a couple of residents there. Sige, i-pass forward yun sa Ormoc. Yeah. There's 10 million pesos appropriated for ROW for a 200 million project in Ormoc Baybay, Southern Leyte, Barangay Road. This is including ROW. So, sige, please, next slide. Wala bang sound?
Nalaman na daw ng lahat ng mga apektado, magkakaroon ng road widening. Pag widening nung una, ang alam ko ilan na gibayaran ang amo ginikanan, pero ang karon ang pagkakaalam ko kanang 2 meters na ila idagdag walay usapan nga kuan kanang bayaran.
This is
Kasi ang
discretion.
sinasabi ng DPWH, mga tao nila dyan, bayad na yan nung taon pa yung mga kanununuan pa, binayaran na daw nila yan. Ang tanong ko nga sa kanila, meron kayong resibo, kayo, binabayari yung lulo mo, binayaran, binigay sa yung resibo na itong lupa na to, dinonate ko ng lulo ni mo.
Ang hinahanap nga namin yung engineer. Kasi gusto namin tiyakin sa engineer. Eh, ang engineer, tinatanong namin sa foreman or mga kan, bihira lang daw magpapakita.
Hindi mo kami nabigyan ng kahit kunting kompensasyon, andito lang kami sa sulok na punta.
Pero ambot lang sa uban kay mama nila question nga nung mukaan kay dako boy makuan nila anong atidahan nila mga tanggal.
Ang ako lang, dito kami nabubuhay. Mawawala, di paano na ako? Wala kang laban sa gobyerno pag project ng gobyerno, di ba?
Katulad sa amin na wala namang mga pera na sapat na ilaban sa attorney pa lang eh. Sa akin nga, okay lang. Kaya sabi ko, basta ikabubuti ng ano naman, para sa lahat naman. Pero yung iba talaga na naapektuhan ng talagang widening, yun ang mabigat sa kanila.
Yun lang, kompensasyon. Bigyan kami ng lugar na matrabahuan eh.
Posible na wala talagang budget para dito sa ano na yan. Basta konsiderasyon na lang nila bilang ano na lang na mag... Siyempre, paano yung katulad ng walang-wala din. Sabi ko, pagkatapos ng ano itong tawag dito, widening na to, ipasolve ito. Para hindi naman tayo mga ano na, magbinayad tayo ng hindi na natin lupa.
Saka, if you notice, Mr. President, Madam Chair, parang putol-putol, merong 6 lanes, merong 2 lanes, merong 4 lanes. Ano ba talaga itong project na ito? Because of right-of-way issues. And yet, you committed to us, and that's the reason why I agreed or I relented to restore the full amount of 50.5 billion or 50.8. Kasi nga, sinabi nyo, kayang settle. And yet, up to now, it's already 2019, hindi po nasa-settle. The point here, Mr. President, is there is budget for settlement of ROW. In fact, for the 2018 GAA, there's 20 billion for ROW. Bukod pa yan, that's outside the ROW funds for specific projects like the one in Ormoc, kasi may kasamang 10 million. So we inquired and we received a letter from the DPWH engineer. This is Loreto Cedro, Chief ng Planning ng Regional Office 8. Nagbigay ng certification that the ROW acquisitions were not yet fully addressed, considering that some landowners cannot be located. But we were able to locate some of them, Mr. President. So, hindi ba pwedeng isettle nyo para naman yung mga tao hindi nakabilad? One person there is now living in a tent because yung kanyang dating tinitigilan, tinamaan ng kalsada. No? And then, why would the project engineer or maybe the contractor inform the residents there na matagal lang na-settle? Maybe he was referring to the 2-lane road that was constructed much earlier. But ang tinamaan ng right-of-way doon sa kalsadang tinitiran nila, yung widening. So apparently, there was deception. So may I just appeal to the chair of the Finance Committee, baka pwedeng isettle nyo to as soon as possible. And if you want, we will assist you in locating these people. Can you do it within the week?
Mr. President, first, we acknowledge that indeed there are right-of-way available funds. Second, that there were road right-of-way acquisitions, and there are, as your picture shows, pending ones. And yes, of course there are funds, and anyone here, I'm sure the DPWH also would not want not to pay, assuming they are legitimate claimants and their ninunos have not been paid. But if they are settling, informal settlers on government-acquired land, they have to vacate. But if their ninunos have been paid or they have not been paid, then the funds need to be expeditiously paid to them. And so we can micromanage. Perhaps your staff who went there can talk to the regional
Yes,
director
we'll do that, Mr.
who is
President.
present here today. And before the end of the day, your staff and the RD8 can talk so that if they're legitimate claimants and have not been paid, we should pay them. But if they are new claimants and they've been paid before, they should leave. Di ba ganun lang?
Yes, Mr. President, Madam Chair. Yung isang na-interview, sabi nila, nasabit na yung titulo.
Kasi
at
minsan
sa
iba dyan,
Xerox.
mga professional squatters din eh.
No, but according to one of the interviewees, sinabit niya yung Xerox copy ng kanyang titulo,
Ayun.
pero wala pa rin nangyayari.
Oh.
Anyway,
Pag may karapatan po, kailangan bayaran ng gobyerno. Pero kung sindikato na umiiral, hindi po dapat natin pabayaan ng ganun. Oo.
aside from the injustice, nakita nyo hindi masyado magamit yung kalsada, and it is it's accident prone. It's a hazard actually. It's a road hazard kasi pwede may mga ma-aksidente dyan. The same is true with Padre Garcia, Mr. President, and some of the residents are here, no? Because when they learned that there will be interpellations, they talked to my team who went to the area, and they want to see for themselves how this issue will be resolved. No? Can we jump to the Padre Garcia diversion? Dito makita nyo malinaw na hindi na settle because there's a house right in the middle of the road. Another house, naka-protrude dyan sa road. So, pwede ma-accidented. Look, pag may nagdadrive dyan, pwede may mamatay dyan. In other words, the right-of-way issue has not been settled. So, again, may we appeal to the DPWH to settle once and for all these right-of-way issues. Kung ano man yung mga issues, tulungan na lang natin sila. Wag na yung parang ina-argue pa natin yung position natin. They've been living there for a very long time.
Mr. President, that has been settled. Naghahanap lang daw ng lilipatan yung bahay na yon.
Nakausap nga namin eh. Sabi hindi settled eh. Wala rin nakipag-usap. And I think a representative from the DPWH,
Meron daw silang permit to enter.
hindi, pinapipirma nga sila ng permit to enter. Ayaw nila magpirma. Look, listen, take a listen to them.
Gagawin nuri kahit kung daan papuntang
Yan, yung bahay niya.
Bawan. Basta nagpicture-picture sila dyan, tapos yun na, umalis na. Tapos nag-iwan ng papel, sabi, permahan ko daw. Sabi ko, hindi ko yan mapepermahan, hindi ko naintindihan yan. Dinakbak na nila, sinira na nila ang mga puno. Ay, wala naman silang ibinabayad. Tanungan nga sila kung binayaran ka ba, Wala naman. Kaya ako'y na-high blood at saka sa gabi. Yun ang iniisip ko, hindi ako makatulog.
That's the appeal that I'm trying to, medyo have pity, Mr. President. These are people who appear helpless, Sabi nga nila, yung isang na-interview namin doon sa Visayas region, sabi nila, anong laban namin pagka gobyerno yung kalaban namin? And then another person told us na wala silang pang-attorney, paano silang lalaban? So, Madam Chair.
Mr. President, tama po kayo na may karapatan ng mga taong ito. DPWH is aware of it. They say they have the funds. They say everything is ongoing. And indeed, the people have to be paid for it.
Ang problema natin, Mr. President, year in and year out, ganito yung usapan natin. The same questions, the same answers, the same commitments, and yet, susunod na taon, yun na naman ang pag-uusapan natin. So, having said that,
Ito yung
anyway, I have, marami pa akong topics na ite-take up. I'd like to suspend my interpellation and find out from DPWH how fast they can settle the payments for ROW with these people, Mr. President. I'd like
Mr.
to-
President, I will
don't
not
like
read
to
into,
deny.
thank you for that. May I just give you the answer to the featured picture of that house in the Inquirer today? Ito na lang ho yung mahabang paliwanag.
Yeah.
Abot na lang, para masakit na yung
Yan
boses
yung
ko.
nasa gitna ng kalsada.
Yes,
Na
iyan
hindi
yung
magamit ng
sagot.
kalsada kasi may bahay sa gitna ng kalsada.
Okay. Nandyan po yung sagot ng DPWH. Bigay na lang po sa inyo. Okay.
Yeah, pero hindi naman po magagamit ito ng tao, yung paliwanag. Di ba mas magandang kausapin yung tao?
Kinakausap. Kinakausap. ng DE.
Nabayaran na po ba?
Tinanggap na yung offer. Oh, I am informed, Mr. President, that the offer has been accepted.
Can we have a copy of the proof of payment so I'll shut my...
You said that the offer has been accepted, right? Oo. So we request the DPWH to give to the Office of Senator Lacson the proof of acceptance of the offer.
How about the others, Mr. President? Isa lang po yun. How about yung ibang nagkiklaim? Mabuti pa, after I suspend, meron dito mga taga Padre Garcia? Or mga
Ganito
taga
po.
Batangas, kababae ni...
Okay, the Region 8 RD is here for your other concern.
How about
The-
Region 4A?
The 4A RD is also here.
Oh, baka
Ayan, dyan na
pwedeng-
lang ho mag-usap.
Oh, sige,
Oo.
sige. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in the meantime, I'll suspend my interpellation, Mr. President.
suspend. Kailan ulit?
Meron pang, I don't want to deny other
okay.
colleagues.
Okay. Sige po.
Senator, the President Pro Tem, Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, since some of these projects are in the province of Batangas, may I ask the sponsor a few questions regarding some of these projects?
Yes, Mr. President.
knowing
But I
that-
believe that you would know it better than I do.
No,